one of the things that I always tell people that you can do is ask advice. And then we kind of touched on this earlier, kind of with the imposter syndrome a little bit, but people love giving advice. And so if you uh, you need a little bit of background. So if there's something, if you did do that pre-known thing, if you did look at somebody on LinkedIn and kind of see what their background is, or if you've asked what their projects they're working on, then then you can you can hit them up with uh, advice. So like for the beekeeping thing, you can say, hey, I'm thinking about starting beekeeping. Is there a hardy bee that I could get? Because I don't want my bees to die. Do I need that little smoke puffer thing? What kind of bee? Is there a brand of
The
suit?
smoking gun. Yep.
Yeah, is there a brand of suit that I need? And then they would love to give you advice. And so this really kicks off the conversation, and it also builds a lot of trust, because if someone gives you advice and then you don't have to do all of it, but if you do one thing and you follow up and you say, hey, I took your advice and I followed up and I got this bee suit, then they kind of take you under their wing. They're like, oh, he could have come to anyone, but he came to me and asked me for advice, and he's doing the thing. So now they're looking out for you, and you've really
Sure.
elevated yourself because they gave you advice and you took some of it and you followed up. Now you're really starting to bond with that person, and they're looking out for you, because a victory for you is a victory for them because you're one of theirs.
Sure. Right.
And
So the asking for advice, and would you tend that towards the theme that you're at? Like if you're at a real estate conference or something, would you ask for advice in that general area specifically, or do you ask just kind of like whatever's interesting based on the conversation that you're having,
I
or
would
where do you want to try to lean that?
Right. I would be open to both. So if there's something that you actually want to know about the real estate area that you think that person might know, or you have a way of doing something, you say, I wonder how they do it, then I would ask advice about that. But then there's also, if there's something that, you have your puppy there, and if you found out someone else had a puppy and they had a story about how they house trained their dog, and then you
Sure.
could also be like, hey, I have a puppy and I'm just curious. This is, they're, we finally got the house training, but my dog chews up all the shoes. Have you had that issue? Do you have any advice on that? And yeah, just so it could be about whatever the project is, but it could also be about, anything that
Whatever.
people, if they have a little 2 cents, they might be like, oh, our dog never did that. Or they could say, oh, here's what you do. You put, some peppermint. No, that'd probably get them to chew it up more. Some fingernail
Vinegar.
polish removal, yeah, or something on your shoes, and then they'll leave it alone.
Yeah. Sure.
But then they've
Here's some.
helped you, and then you say, hey, I tried that and it worked. And they're like, yes, all right.
That's right.
Then also to break down, because people always talk about getting past the small talk into the real conversation, but you can't just jump into the real conversations. It's like, what is your most devastating business loss you've ever had? You're like, I don't feel comfortable sharing that with you, stranger. And so uh, if you, one thing that brings down the barriers is telling an embarrassing story, because then it shows that you're vulnerable and you don't take yourself too seriously. So like I would tell people about when I uh, started choking at an event on a turkey sandwich. And there was a lot of beautiful ladies there. And I was like, it'd be really embarrassing if I started choking on this sandwich. And then I started choking on the sandwich. I manifested it. I started choking on the sandwich. And I was thinking, okay, great. Now either someone's going to save me, and, they're the hero. We're going to sing for He's a Jolly Good Fellow and carry him around. They're the hero, and everyone's going to like that person. And meanwhile, I'm the guy that doesn't know how to chew his food. Or, maybe I'm just going to collapse and die here on the floor. But either way, it was really embarrassing. I had to give myself the Heimlich, the self Heimlich, and it worked. And then, but it was a
Oh
horrible thing.
man,
People
that
about,
is awful.
yeah,
That is awful.
yes, it was terrible.
I did not know this story. I
Oh,
think you're gonna have to finish it up real quick because I'm interested now.
yeah, I gave myself the the back of the chair thing. I gave myself the Heimlich. And then for anyone who was watching, I tried to act like I was dancing, like it was a dance move that I was doing. And
because you were so embarrassed.
I was embarrassed.
That is not funny at all. This
And
is awful.
when I'm at events, I tell people this story and I say, hey, see, be careful over there because last time I choked on one of those sandwiches and it was really embarrassing. And I tell them the story. And then usually they get a laugh and they'll usually share a story of their own about something. So it could be about choking, about how a relative of theirs choked somewhere and something happened
Yeah,
to them.
sure.
Or they laugh and it'll remind them of something else and they'll tell a story. Now you both shared a vulnerable moment. So it's not like,
Hmm.
oh, Nick's just this cool guy that nothing ever happens to. Now I say, hey, this horrible thing happened over there. That's why they don't let us have the cheese anymore, whatever it is.
Sure, right. Vulnerable, yeah, the vulnerability where you're able to actually like break past that awkward point that you were in.
Yeah.
You can have like a deeper conversation. And then perhaps you could get into tell me about your biggest passion or your biggest failure in business. I mean, maybe not directly, but you're building that rapport still, that
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah, so that definitely helps break that initial thing down, and that lets people really open up. And then, if after we both shared embarrassing stories, and then I say, "What was your biggest business failure?" Then you're more likely to break it out because we've already talked about these horribly embarrassing things that happened. So now your guard's down, and we can actually get to real conversation.
Sure. You've already almost you haven't aired your dirty laundry, but you've seen the person in their underwear per se.
Right.
You can have more of a conversation. So
Yes.
vulnerability and turkey sandwiches.